I am terrified about what could possibly happen because our leaders matter. Who we select, who speaks for us, who holds that bully pulpit. It affects us in ways that sometimes I think people take for granted.
The Supreme Court, please back me up, I'm begging you. In 82, the Supreme Court says the presidents have immunity for what they do when they take official acts as president. And so if the president's the chief executive officer, he has the sole authority to execute and enforce the law of the land. Donald Trump will just argue that I was enforcing election fraud. I was pursuing allegations of election fraud. I was pursuing recounts. I was pursuing election challenges. I was pursuing alternative slates of electors. If you say that any other president, once they leave office, the following president just can come in with lawyers and indict the former guy, that's crazy. That means Joe Biden can be indicted after he leaves in a year for child trafficking. That means you can indict Joe Biden for cocaine possession. That means you can indict Joe Biden for financial fraud. It's insane. Under this theory that the Democrats are pushing, you can charge Abe Lincoln with murder for prosecuting the Civil War. It doesn't make any sense. No one's going to buy it. I cannot wait till it gets to the high court.
Judge, do you want to back him or not back him?
You did a good job,
Thank
Jesse.
you.
Yes, you're welcome. Look, here there is an untested question as to whether or not a president can be charged with a crime allegedly occurring during the time that he was in office. We know that presidents have immunity from lawsuits in civil cases, but this has never been tested before because no president in American history has ever been indicted for a crime. And it does, Jesse. It opens the floodgates. And when you talk about Biden, talk about a dereliction of duty. 13 servicemen killed in Afghanistan because they couldn't get an answer as to whether or not they could engage the person they thought was and it turned out to be a suicide bomber. Maybe you could indict Obama, subject to the statute of limitations, of course, for that drone attack that killed an American citizen and an Italian citizen. I mean, how much do you want to extend this? So the judges know that if they allow this, the floodgates are open and every president can be indicted by a subsequent president. Now, if a president has to look over his shoulder every time he makes or she makes a decision, it's a nightmare. You know that, Dana. You've dealt with them. I do want to talk about Michelle Obama, though, for a second. What I want to talk about is the fact that she did something that I didn't think they would come out so soon and do. She tried to gin up resentment by blacks against Donald Trump. Why? Because Donald Trump blacks are moving toward Donald Trump, away from the Democrat Party. Joe Biden has lost, 24 percentage points with the blacks. And she says if a similar predicament befell a black man, the bars are different, addressing the fact that Trump was indicted 4 times. And she says that a black man can't be indicted a bunch of times and run for office. You know, she seems to forget that Trump has not been convicted of anything. Trump has not been found guilty by the Senate. Trump hasn't even, he's got the presumption of innocence. And she is trying so hard to remind African Americans and to divide, which is what the Democrats do. They create division, and it's racist division. You know, a black man couldn't go through what Donald Trump is going through. So, Jesse, you're right, and I think there's even more to it.
So I get it. I struggle with the absolute immunity argument that President Trump's lawyers make, but I'm sensitive to what the judge and what Jesse say about, do you open the door to endless pursuits by political opponents? Judge, you mentioned an interesting point. It is an untested question about what you can or cannot do with a former president. But I would say this: we've never had a former president do what happened on January 6th and continue to talk about it in ways that show no remorse.
Thank you for telling me that. See, there's a typical fake news deal.
They happily parrot that January 6th is an insurrection when we know it wasn't. They say crime is down when it's not. And on cue, they'll claim this year was the hottest year since in 125,000 years. They will parrot everything they're supposed to say. Let's also remember the things that the media went for. all the hoaxes, the Fine People hoax, the most easily debunked hoax in history. You just read the transcript. No reporter wanted to do that. Take Whipgate. There was photographic evidence and testimony that Joe was indeed wrong, but the media went with it anyway. There's obviously the Hunter's laptop story. Polls showed that it did help him beat Trump by suppressing the scandal, which would have showed a connection between, what Hunter was making and what maybe Joe was getting. Then you look at his declining function, which they only cover it if they have no choice when it just shows up there. Meanwhile, and, obviously Michelle's one of them, the usual suspects are predicting the end of the world if Trump returns. And yet when Trump was president, we had peace and prosperity, no wars. The only thing Trump broke was the media's minds. And that's what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with a massive nervous breakdown that's been going on for almost 4 years. Actually, it started earlier, and it's just going to get worse. You got to get used to this. There's going to be so much crap flying. I mean, he's already Hitler. I don't know what they're going to do next. What's worse than Hitler?
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
It's not about justice, it's not about agenda, it's not about mobilizing people, it's about dialing for corporate dollars. These two parties have sold the U.S. government and the American people to the highest bidders.